Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL wire site that covers the Arizona Cardinals, recording episode 780 with my co-host, Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals sites, and we are waiting for the NFL schedules to be released this week. That will come out Thursday, and so this show, we're going to talk a little bit about the strength schedule. We're not going to make predictions yet because we can talk about how many wins we think we're going to get, but we might as well wait till we get the actual schedule so we can go week by week and still coming with a win-loss record that's not going to be very awesome. I mean, yeah, last year, I won't be able to be too optimistic. Like, I guess optimistic is 6 games, right? That's optimistic.
Yeah, I think anything that clears. I don't think people realize that when your win-loss over-under, and we've talked about this a lot, but when your win-loss over-under set at 4.5, I don't think people realize how few times NFL teams have cleared that number and done so in like a big manner, right?
And the fact that you get plus odds on the over. The last I saw it was minus 160 on the under, and so they're basically begging people to bet the over at this point.
Right. And so, like you said, optimism with a win total at 4.5, optimism is 6. And here's the reality. A really good season is 7. Like, I know that's almost blasphemous to say, but like, that's a really good season for a team with a win total at 4.5. Like, you look at the other, bottom teams in terms of what they did last year, the early draftees, right? The Las Vegas Raiders, who had the number 1 pick, their win total is 5.5. So you're saying, oh, it's only a game more, but understand their win total is 5.5 and the over is minus 125. The under's plus money. The Miami Dolphins, the other team with the under 4.5 wins, they're minus 130 to stay under 4.5, but only plus 110 to go over. So not as enticing. The New York Jets are 5.5. There's not another team in the league right now the Tennessee Titans are 6.5, Jess. Like this is widely considered the worst team in the NFL, and not necessarily from the player perspective. They are considered or the favorites to draft first because they are, from a talent perspective, probably in the bottom third of the NFL, right? If the 32 teams, so if you say, the top 10, then the next, 11, and then the bottom 11, they're probably in that bottom 11. So, anywhere from 21 to 32. They have the hardest schedule in the NFL.
And the least one of the least confident quarterback rooms that you can have.
Confident and competent, right? Like,
well, I mean confident in like publicly, you don't look at that quarterback room and think you can win games. At least like Vegas they've got Kirk Cousins and Fernando Mendoza. So you've got a mix of steady vets and hope for the future. In Miami, you've got hope with Malik Willis.
But I will.
You've got Cam Ward. You've got hope. But the Cardinals, you don't have
that.
You don't have that.
Well, but I will say this: I would rather be at 4.5 with the Cardinals quarter. And again, it does not mean that it's going to work out this season. So I just want that to be abundantly clear. But I would rather be at 4.5 for my win total with Brissett, Minshew, and Beck than I would have to go spend $25 million on Malik Willis and still be at 4.5. Now, that's not to say that they wouldn't have bumped up to maybe 5.5, 6.5 with Malik Willis. Who knows? But if I'm a Dolphins fan and our win total is still 4.5 and we sign Malik Willis, I'd be like, what did we do? Like, that's a slightly different thing. And I know Cardinals fans want to, I was talking to a couple tonight. It was kind of interesting. And we were talking about, the love factor and he goes, yeah, he's going to be great until he leaves and wins a Super Bowl in San Francisco. And I was just like, why do you say that? He's like, he's going to be like Saquon. And I was like, well, if he's like Saquon, it's a good pick, right? We've said this all along. It's a great pick. It just doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead to wins, right? Like that's exactly the bugaboo with drafting a running back. And so when people got excited, and understandably, like, I don't think it's bad to be excited to watch Jeremiah Love play football. But when people got excited and then they kind of got almost offended, like that their win total so low and that people are predicting, on the under specifically and kind of hammering the under. It's like, but you have to look at the perspective of other people. They are looking from the outside in. They look at the names and what they have accomplished thus far, not the hope of what they can still become. And they go, okay, this is not a good roster. It has not proven to be a good roster. Do they have some good players? Absolutely. Has it proven to be a good roster yet? No. Mike LaFleur, obviously, we've had the discussion, a complete flame out with the New York Jets as the OC for the first time. Doesn't mean it won't work. I mean, that's one of the great things about getting hired by Sean McVay is that McVay has done a great job of mentoring and getting guys like Liam Cohen and others prepared, right, to go out, and Kevin O'Connell and those guys, prepared to go out and be successful as NFL head coaches. So all of that is a good thing. But the reality remains, the biggest question mark on the roster for the Cardinals is quarterback. The most important position in the NFL, and maybe all of sports, is quarterback. So it makes sense that nobody's buying anything yet until we see until we see how everything plays out. So, we'll see where they end up. We'll see, all of that coming up here. But right now, I mean, the reality is, unless you're a Cardinals fan, there's not a lot to be excited about, right?
Oh, right. There's not. And based on roster talent, the other part is the strength of schedule. They have one of the hardest schedules in the NFL. I find it interesting because it was just last week I saw something that said the Cardinals had the hardest schedule, and then another one came out in the last day or two that said they had the third hardest schedule. So I'm not sure.
I mean, here's the reality. They have one of the 5 hardest schedules in the NFL, and they were one of the 3 worst teams in the NFL.
It's because they play in the NFC West, specifically because it's the strength schedule based on what happened last year. And when you have the NFC West, where you're facing all 3 other teams twice a year, and they won double-digit games and all went to the playoffs, that's tough. And then the year that you are in last place, one of the last place teams that you play in the conference are the Detroit Lions. So it's not like you were playing a bad team. You're playing a talented team who was on an off year. And so based on the bad teams they faced last year, or the bad teams that are on their schedule for this year, their last place games are laughable, because it's last place games are the Chargers.
No, the Raiders.
That
was the AFC West.
AFC West.
Yeah.
The entire AFC West. And so they take on Washington. They take on
the Jets.
The Jets. So that's the one that they have like a bad. So you got Washington, who was devastated by injuries, and you have the Detroit Lions, who are, I mean, don't you wish the Cardinals were a Lions-like last place team?
Yeah, and that's just what makes it really difficult, right? And you kind of explained it perfectly. Like, when you have the worst, or when you're supposed to be one of the worst teams, and so you're supposed to, theoretically have it a little easier, and you end up with the oh no, so theirs were the Jets, the Lions, and the Saints. The Saints were, and so you look at it and you say, oh crap, like that's not easy. And you and I were you and I were texting, right? Talking about today and kind of going through things, and it's like, let's just say they are bad, right? Top 2 pick in the 2027 NFL draft, which won't be a shock to anybody if that's the outcome. Next year doesn't get any easier, man. I mean, they get the NFC South. So if they're the 4th place team again, they get the NFC South. Likely the Saints or the Falcons, right? Maybe the Panthers drop back. Who knows? They get the NFC East, so we'll get to see the Giants or the Commanders again, unless the Eagles or the Eagles or the Cowboys really fall off. And then it's the AFC South, so you look at it and you go, well, it's likely going to be the Tennessee Titans. But if I'm a Cardinals fan, and I've been a Cardinals fan for a really long time, let's just be honest. What are we expecting? We're expecting the Houston Texans to completely crap the bed this year and then come back next year with the worst, be the 4th seed in the AFC South, and then come back the next year, right? And the Cardinals somehow end up with, because we're literally talking about that with the Lions, right? Like the Lions went from Super Bowl favorite in the NFC to playing a 4th place schedule. And that's really what the luck is about, isn't it, Jess? Like, you look at the Lions, for instance, their 4th place schedule, the Titans, the Giants, the Cardinals. That's a 4th place schedule.
What it should look like.
Right. Like, if the Cardinals played the Jets, the Titans, and the Giants, which they do play the Jets and the Giants, I get that. But if they played the Jets, the Titans, and the Giants, we'd be like, okay, that's fair. But the fact that they got the Saints, who, finished 6-11, and when they went to Tyler Shuck, really, really, I mean, you look at Jess, they were 2-9. They finished the season 4-3 or 4-2, and we're playing good football. Like, that's just what we've talked about, right? Cardinals get a top 3 pick in a year that a premium position isn't available. So they take one of the top 5 players in the draft, unquestioned, but the other guys that were top 5 were a safety and an off-ball linebacker. There's no quarterback, there's no offensive tackle, there's no edge rusher in this draft we're taking. The Cardinals have a 4th place schedule, and they end up drawing the Lions and the Saints in 2 of their 3 games. like, come on, man. Like this team can't lose even the right way. That's just what we found. And that's what makes it tough, because you look at this schedule and you just, there's no easy outs in this one. Like, unless you open with the Jets or the Raiders, there's just not a single schedule where you're like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a good one. So we'll see how it works out, right?
Yep. Coming up next on the Rise of Seaward podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's talk a little bit about what we want, what do we know about the schedule, and what are we hoping for. That's coming up next on Rise of Seaward. Back on the Rise of Seaward podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. We're getting schedule releases. We're getting, well, at least game releases, because the broadcast partners get to announce their games. There's international game rumors, none of which the Cardinals are involved with. However, we can piece together at least the weeks that we know they will not face teams. And I kind of pieced that together. So in week 1, we know that 6 opponents are off the table, because we know 3 of the week 1 matchups, and all of them involve teams the Cardinals will play. So they're not going to play the Cowboys, the Giants, the Broncos, the Chiefs, the 49ers, or the Rams in week 1. All of them play each other. The Cardinals face all of them.
And let's be honest, Jess, they're not going to play the Seahawks in week 1, because they're not going to be the first game of the NFL season. Like, that's just
the NFL season opener. That would be such a dud of a matchup for the NFL. The defending champion Seahawks against the Cardinals. And we have, in fairness, we have seen now. Did that one schedule image that came out, did it get the Monday night game wrong?
Let me look here. There it is. No, because the Chargers, and it was, oh yes, it did, because it was supposed to be Chiefs and Broncos, correct?
Yes. And so we saw that. And so when we're going to talk about when we do our schedule prediction, the week 1 game, we're basing on that image, but we know that image isn't
completely accurate. Yeah.
It got some things right, but it's not. And you know, the internet tries to trick us, but we know those teams are not in week 1.
And they are, there are some people out there that are saying that the Patriots and Seahawks are supposedly going to run it back this year to open up the season. That would be interesting, right?
It would be interesting.
But again, we know the Cardinals are not going. I shouldn't say that. We know there's a very high likelihood that the Cardinals are not going to, be the first game of the season. So
no.
So that really rules that out. So then it becomes, okay, what season? Who would the Cardinals see first? And the first thing that we also allegedly know, and this guy has been fairly accurate, are the international games. And we know that the NFL is not sending the Cardinals international this year, right?
Nope. No, they're not going to play in week 2. They're not going to play the Lions, because the Lions are going to play against the Bills on Thursday night as the Bills open their new stadium. They're not going to face the Cowboys in week 3 in Rio, because the Cowboys are playing in Rio against somebody else. They're not going to play the Saints in France. The Steelers are rumored to play that game in week 7. They won't play in Mexico against the 49ers. That is supposedly happening against, but it'll be Kyler Murray, though. It'll be Vikings, 49ers in Mexico City in week 11. And then they won't. So the Cardinals play both the Eagles and the Cowboys this season, but they won't play them in week 12, because the Cowboys and the Eagles are playing on Thanksgiving Day. So those are the ones that we know.
Yeah, and
we
the
just
other
know what weeks that they're not going to play the Cowboys, Giants, Lions, 49ers. So we know that they won't face San Francisco week 1 or week 11. We also know that it is very likely they will end week 18 will be at home. That's usually how they do it, because week 17 they cannot be at home because of the, that's how that ends up working. So they will be on the and that I need to change that on my that I'm just gonna flip that around. Probably shouldn't have had it.
Yeah, no,
probably shouldn't have had them doing 3 straight road games anyway. So
well, they did last year, right? But
yeah. But in terms of the things that we look for, where would you like to see the bye, and how many national games do you think, or would you like to get?
I mean, it's always fun to play national games. I kind of group those in together. I would like the Cardinals bye to be later in the season, because if they are bad, I don't want the bye too early in the season, because if the change is made at quarterback, again, Jacoby Brissett, 2-15 as a starter in his last 17 starts, obviously 1-11 with the Cardinals, 1-4 with the New England Patriots. I would prefer that bye to be, middle to after. So week 9 and on would be ideal to me. And then I would couple that with, if they're going to have a national game, I would prefer to see the Cardinals on a national game with Carson Beck under center. And kind of, again, I know the Josh Rosen thing didn't work, but like that Thursday night game when Rosen played
was his best game of the year.
And so it would be nice to kind of just see what the rookie has, because there's a reality that you might have to be making a decision on what you're going to do next. So I know people have used the line of like, well, Carson Beck shouldn't stop you from drafting a guy early next year, and I don't disagree with that, but I also would prefer not to set a 3rd round pick on fire.
And what we talked about with Carson Beck leading up to the draft, I think he has, at minimum, like you like doing player comps, like in terms of players, I think he's anywhere, worst case scenario, Matt Barkley, does basically nothing in the NFL but plays a really long time. Best case scenarios like Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, and I've said, my comp for him, and I know people are going to hate this, but I don't care. My comp for him's been Chad Pennington. The Marshall quarterback who ended up having a good career. Pennington was
a very good quarterback. He barely could throw the ball late in his career.
Yeah. But you look at it, he was 6'4", 230 pounds. I don't think people remember him being that big. He ran a 4.8 40. He was athletic enough. He did a nice, his vertical was in the 74th percentile. He had a really nice short shuttle, 82nd percentile for quarterbacks. And, he was a guy that made a couple Pro Bowls. He was a decent quarterback in the NFL. Good enough to win and good enough to get teams to the playoffs. And he was older when he started. He was 24, his first season in the NFL. Kind of again mirrors the Beck trajectory. I look at him. Obviously, the biggest thing is the Cardinals didn't have to spend a top 20 pick on him like the Jets did back in 2000, but I like the idea of a a true kind of game manager, a guy that went 44 and 37 in his career, threw for over 17,000 yards and threw for over 100 touchdowns. Like that's not a bad guy. And you put those stats into context that they happened in the 2000s, right? Like that all kind of works itself out. And Pennington's best season, he finished second in the MVP voting. Like, I don't think we'll see that from Carson Beck, but it would be cool if it happened, right? And so that's the way I look at everything. The way the Jets kind of brought him up and allowed him to grow, and he became a decent starter. Obviously had the arm issues, and that's a question we have about Beck as well with the arm strength questions. So we'll see how that all goes, but I don't, if that's what Beck ends up becoming, people are going to always want to replace him, but there's been worse quarterbacks in the NFL, right?
Totally. So we don't expect, I would be shocked, absolutely shocked, if there were any Sunday night or Monday night games.
Oh yeah, that would be baffling.
Because there's zero appeal to this team, but I'd like to avoid cold weather games, the potential for those. But other than that, I kind of hope that the bye is later, like you said, to allow, if there's a transition that makes it's a very natural transition point to go to a new quarterback or something like that. But honestly, are we rooting for the Cardinals to try and win, or are we rooting for them to be bad enough to get a top 3 pick in this draft?
Well, I think
so that's
I think a lot of it just comes down to how the season opens, right? Like if let's say they are, to start the season, let's just throw out, we know it won't be these teams, but they start out with Seattle and Kansas City and San Francisco early, right? And they just get their doors blown off, and they're 0-3, and we're seeing similarities to last year. Maybe the offense is scoring at a higher clip, but we're seeing similarities to last year against good offenses, against good teams, against good organizations. I think at that point you're saying, like, okay, we're just waiting to see what Carson Beck can do. So let's get to the bye week. Let's transition to Beck. If it's 7 to 8 games, that's a good idea of what he can be. If you open up with teams like the Jets and the Raiders and maybe Washington's still down, maybe New Orleans, and Tyler Shuck have that.
The Cardinals get some hope at 2-2.
Yeah. Then obviously you're saying, like, okay, let's see what they can do. But a lot of it just comes down to how the season starts. And so, we're never going to root for the tank job, but we kind of both understand too, like, unless Carson Beck is a dude, then losing is probably the best for the long-term outlook of the franchise. It's just really hard to say that when you've basically tanked 3 of the last 4 years, maybe not on purpose on a couple of them, but you've tanked 3 of the last 4 years. And this GM has 2 wins without the quarterback that they jettisoned, right?
Coming up next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. Now, we are going to make our predictions. We're going to guess the schedule, which, let's be honest, it's an exercise in futility. However, let's see how we can do it. That's coming up next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on the Rise of Spirit podcast. It's our Cardinals talk on the web. We're going to try and predict the schedule before it comes out. Last year, I pegged 4 games correctly. Their week 3, week 4, their week 11, and their bye week. But let's look at this year. We believe we have a leak, and so we both picked the Cardinals to host the Eagles at home, but that is based on a graphic that we saw, which might or might not be accurate. But that's why we went that way. Home, Philadelphia. And then week 2, we both have them going against the NFC West, but you have them going at home. What's your week 2 matchup for the Cardinals?
Yeah, week 2, second home game, and this would be a murderer's row, right? Like both of our schedule would be to start the season, but I have them going with the Seattle Seahawks. Like that would be tough, man. You open with Philly and an NFC West team. I don't know what's worse, mine with the defending Super Bowl champs, or yours, a road game against the
game against San Francisco. And here's the thing: the way it plays out, that defense is going to be tested with 2 of the best running backs in the NFL in the first 2 weeks, in Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey. If it plays out that way,
well, and then the flip side of that is, it would be kind of devastating to get Jadarian Price early and him outplay Jeremiah Love, would it not?
That would be. Oh, that wouldn't be fun. That wouldn't be fun. Week 3, the Cardinals are on the road. I have them playing the Saints in week 3. You have them going on the road to play Kansas City.
Again, there's just, like we could, obviously, we were guessing, but we both could have thrown them a bone here and been like, God, they open up and get murdered. Let's throw them the Jets here, right? Let's throw them the Raiders here. I obviously on paper that Saints game from you is a little easier, but it's also a second week on the road. It's going from Santa Clara to New Orleans. That's nearly as rough as going Eagles, Seahawks, Chiefs, but neither of us have it getting any easier, right?
No, week 4. So basically, Seth and I swap our week 2 and week 4. I have them going on the road in week 2 to the 49ers and hosting the Seahawks in week 4. Seth has the Cardinals hosting Seattle in week 2 and traveling to Santa Clara in week 4 to play the 49ers. And so Seth has the Cardinals going Eagles, Seahawks, Chiefs, 49ers to start the season, which seems like an inevitable 0-4 start. Now, Seth has game-by-game predictions, but we'll wait until we know the actual schedule so that we can build the record how it actually looks. My schedule for the first 4 weeks is slightly easier because they are in New Orleans instead of in Kansas City. But then we go to week 5, and not only does Seth have them going through a murderer's row in the first 4 weeks, then they're going to have a short week in week 5 after playing those 4 teams.
Yeah, and I think, and this is why I said I don't. What I want to happen, what I think is going to happen are 2 different things, and that's genuinely the problem. And being a Cardinals fan, you've seen this enough. We've seen how this all plays out, right? They're going to get the Las Vegas Raiders early in the season. And I look at it from this perspective. There's a chance that the Raiders have already gone to Fernando Mendoza by week 5. And so the thought is they'll go and get a guy, or they'll get a Thursday night game against the Raiders, and we'll see kind of what happens there. But that, I think and I think you would agree, if they end up with a national TV game, it's going to be a Thursday night football game. There is a question, though, that I have, Jess. Would it be more entertaining? And you talked about how they like to have competitive Thursday night football games in later in the season. But would it be more entertaining if in week 16, because I think week 16 is the last week they do Thursday night football, or even week 17 on that Saturday night, football, or Saturday football games when they have 2 or 3? Would it not be crazy if they put the Cardinals and the Jets on, looking like, hey, who's going to get Arch Manning? Right? Like, both teams.
The 2027 Draft Bowl.
Yeah, would that not be just like because you have to think about it too, right? Like, if you're Carson Beck and you're playing, and in that scenario, right, 2 and 13 at that point, 2 and 14, and you're getting your shot now, you got to try to win that game, right? Whereas the Jets may have already fired Aaron Glenn. They don't have a young quarterback that they're trying to see if he can play or not. And so it just might end up being one of those games where you're like, oh, that tank was really on by the Jets. So, I mean, I think the NFL knows better, right? They're not going to do that. But, man, would that not be entertaining?
Meaningful games on Thursday night late in the year. So, and it makes sense. A Cardinals-Jets, a Cardinals-Raiders Thursday night game makes sense. Cardinals-Raiders makes the most sense because it's a game that otherwise would have the smallest TV audience.
Well, and it makes sense because of, geographics and geographics. It's a much easier, like, the Jets play in Arizona. That's a big ask for the Jets unless they are looking at something, and I don't even know, I haven't looked, but like, unless the Jets are also playing in San Francisco, right? I don't know what their schedule looks like, but
yeah.
And maybe they're like, hey, just stay on the West Coast that weekend. But so, like, that's why it's tough to see that, because there are some interesting aspects. Like you said, Mendoza, Love.
And if Carson Beck, not only that, it's a rematch of the national championship game.
Right. And so, like,
versus Mendoza.
And that's why I kind of hope that it's,
I'm predicting a late season Thursday night game for those teams. That way it's more likely to be Mendoza versus Beck again.
And isn't that kind of what the hope is, right? Like, if the Cardinals are bad, that they are going to Beck, and then we can have those talking points, as opposed to, okay, Jacoby Brissett looking to get
Imagine a Thursday night game against the Jets, and it's Geno Smith versus Jacoby Brissett. What a snooze fest that is.
I mean, it might be great for fantasy, but who knows? Other than that, right?
That does make that is okay. That is true. Jacoby is a fantasy king right now. But so yeah, I've got first 4 weeks. It goes first 5 weeks. It goes home Philadelphia, at 49ers, at Saints, home versus Seahawks, and I have the Cardinals playing the Lions at home in week 5, while Seth goes home Philly, home Seattle, roads Chiefs, road 49ers, and Thursday night home Raiders. We both have them going on the road in week 6. I have them going on the road to play the Chargers, and you have them on the road taking on the Giants. And interesting is how the way you have their road games going. You have them going on consecutive in 6 of their
8. Yeah.
And
you
have them going back to back on the road.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that kind of gets lost. We've talked about it before with their schedules. They don't get any
Well, Cardinals will get no breaks.
Yeah, they don't get any benefits. They don't get any, like, there's no real, like,
there's nothing expected out of this team. They don't have an intriguing quarterback. They don't have a Kyler Murray. They don't, like, there's nothing about this team that has any, as the young kids like to say, this team has zero aura right now. They have negative aura right now. And so they have negative aura right now. And so they will not be featured except on a game where the aura might be worth it. And that's against the Raiders. And so week 6 on the road against the Chargers, you have them on the road against the Giants. And in week 7, we move on. I have them at home against the Washington Commanders, and you have them on the road against Seattle. So they wrap up their Seattle schedule in the first half of the year. Following that, in week 8, I have them at the Cowboys, and you have them at home against the Jets. The way my schedule plays out, the Cardinals could be 0-8. They could be 0-8.
Yeah, and that's why I was trying to, like, really pick how I went about this, because the murderer's row, the first 4 I get, but there are some winnable games over the next 4. Let's be honest, we probably both see them going 0-6 in the division again. And it's less to do with the Cardinals and more to do with the division, right? Like, the division is just loaded for bear. You've got obviously the returning Super Bowl champs, but then you have the team that barely lost to them in the NFC Championship game. And then you have the team that has basically owned them with Kyle Shanahan as the coach. So, it's a tough ask for this team to get a lot of wins. And so there's 2 schools of thought. I'm hopeful that they get some winnable games early when the season isn't lost. And I know 0-4 is basically a lost season from the, statistics that, if you're 0-4, the chances of you making the playoffs are 1.25% or whatever it is, right? Like, I get that. But I'm hopeful that even at 0-4, that if they get a Las Vegas, they get a Giants or a Jets in that area, we could see a win. And so there's a little hopium on my end of, like, maybe they'll get something, because the way you have it playing out, 1-7, just looking at your schedule, 1-7 is the likelihood, and 2-8 or 2-6 seems like the best case scenario. Right. Like, right. And so you look at that
schedule, I will tell you this, my schedule sets up Carson Beck, to foreshadowing a little bit, for Cardinals fans to get a little excited about Carson Beck, about the schedule, how it ends.
Right. And especially the way you have it set up. Like, that's the thing, is you look at this and you've got it set up to where it's like, okay, if they are 2 or less wins, because I think 3-5 in your scenario, you could probably justify continuing to start Jacoby. I'm not saying you should, but if you're 3-5 in your scenario and the way your schedule plays out, you could probably justify anything less than that. Like, you've got to make a change. And here's the thing. If you go to Gardner Minshew, it says more about Beck than it does anything else at that point, right? Like, you're like, okay,
I could see Minshew early in the season. So if things, I could see it being, if they start 0-4 and Jacoby's not good, they're like, okay, Minshew. And then it continues to be bad. And then if it's in the second half of the season, they're like, all right, Beck. Or Jacoby gets hurt or whatever, that could play out. And we get to the Cardinals in week 9. This is where I have the Cardinals having their bye. And, with the potential of a 2-6, 1-7, 0-8 start, this becomes a very natural spot for the Cardinals to make the move to Carson Beck. While you have them in week 9 on the road against the Cowboys, a week after I have them at the Cowboys. But in week 10, following the bye, the Cardinals host the Jets.
And
that's a perfect game for Carson Beck to make his NFL debut.
Yeah, because they don't catch interceptions, so you don't have to worry about that, right? And so, and so that's the thing, Jess, is like that is kind of the perfect setup. That is the perfect entrance to Carson Beck if you can plan it. If you could draw it up, I think you would go 2 weeks later. I know getting him 8 games would be super, or 9 games in your scenario would be super ideal. But I think if you could get a week 10 or week 11 bye and get him like 7 games, because then you're like, okay, if they're 3-4, you can probably go like, we'll wait 1 more year. We'll see where he's at. If they go, 2-5, or God forbid 1-6 or 0-7, you're like, all right, we're moving on. I just the rigors of the NFL, a guy that has played a lot of college football, but you look at the setup, 9 games. Like, even if you won 3 and went 3-6, you're like, I mean, there's no way that everybody's not clamoring for a quarterback, right? And so, like, I kind of want to dilute that down, in my opinion. Like, that's how I look at it, and not have it be so obvious if he's terrible, or not even terrible, just not good enough, right? Not ready, not good enough. Right. But I also think that the way you set it up would be like more than ideal.
Well, and it the way I have it set up, it's a perfect way to create all sorts of Carson Beck hype, only for it to dissipate and fizzle away later in the year. Because after the Cardinals have their bye, this is how I have them playing. I have them at home against the Jets, and then the Thursday night game against the Raiders in week 11. So, in a perfect world, if they make the switch to Carson Beck, he could go 2-0, and then everyone's loving life because they've got their young quarterback. Meanwhile, you have them on the road in you have through week 11, and you have them with a week 12 bye. So week 9, I have them idle. You have them in Dallas. I have them in week 10 coming off the bye at home against the Jets. You have them on the road against the Rams. I have them week 11, Thursday Night Football Raiders. You have them at home against the Broncos. And then week 12, you have the late bye, while I have them against the Seahawks on the road, which would then be that be with the game after I could see after starting the year 0-8, Beck winning 2 games and then getting absolutely hammered in Seattle.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is you look at it, right? The way you have it set up, I think if they could go 2-0 with Beck, right? You make the move to Beck, your record before Beck literally doesn't matter. I know it matters in a lot of other senses, but it literally doesn't matter, right? And so now you're looking at it going, okay, so in your scenario, you have 9 games left. Like, we are looking at 4 wins. Like, if they can get 4 wins with Carson Beck under center, this is a kid that you unless you are just so sold on whether it's Arch or Dante Moore or whatever, you've got a guy that you can give a shot and give him a full season the next year. It is set up perfectly. For me, you have them, going to Seattle. I have them on their late bye, and then I have him coming out and having to face the murderer's row to end the season the same way you kind of do, right?
Yes. You have coming out of the bye, so their next 3 games are home against the Lions, home against the Niners, on the road against the Chargers, while while those are your 4 weeks from the bye. After the Beck takes over for the Jets and the Raiders, they're on the road against Seattle. They're at home against the Rams. They're at the Chiefs, which is going to be in December with Patrick Mahomes in a potential snow game. And then week 15 at home against the Broncos, and which leads to, week 16 for both of us. A couple of games that could be winnable. Week 16, I have them at the Giants, but again, it's a December game. In East Rutherford. They could be ugly, while you have them at home against the Commanders.
Yeah, and that is a game that we'll see where the Commanders are at. I mean, Jaden Daniels, the concerns reared their ugly heads in year 2. The inability to stay healthy, the frame to hold up in the NFL, and the frame to play the style of play he needs to have success. Ended up getting his OC fired, or mutually parting ways, however you want to say it. So that they're going to be an interesting story, because they basically completely cleaned house on the defensive side. They have a new offensive play caller. Like, they're going to be a really intriguing team to watch. You have them, kind of early, middle of the season. I have them late in the season. Your game's going to be like, we might know a little bit about them, barring an injury to Jaden Daniels, but they could be, middle of the pack. My game, we're going to know if they're good or not, right? And in that scenario too, we're going to know if Carson Beck's any good or not, because if this is a team that again has a bad defense and Jaden Daniels is unable to stay healthy, then this is a game you should win. And then I look at the last 2 games, and we know week 17 they're going to be on the road, right? They're just
correct. I have them playing the NFC West final 2 games at the Rams in week 17. You have them at New Orleans in week 17.
Yeah, I kind of just stole that from last year, right? Go to Atlanta, or go to Cincy late, right? Like that's one of those ones where you're just like, oh, okay, we'll see what happens. So we'll see how it all works out. Again, that's another game that you look at in the back half of the schedule, kind of like what you did, right? There are instances of winnable games on that back half of the schedule. Denver has a lot of questions. They have a great defense, but their offense has a lot of questions. We'll see how Bo Nix recovers. The Chargers, again, great defense. Justin Herbert has put up good numbers, but they always seem to struggle, right? We talked about Washington. The Saints are another team, and that there are a lot of question marks about. And then you go on your side, you've got obviously the Jets and the Raiders, but the Giants are a team that there are a lot of question marks about. And then you look at the last game, the expectation is that they will host. Last year, they were on the road for their last 2 games, right? Or what was it, 2 or 3? I can't remember. Yeah, for the last 2 games. But they were on the road for 3 of their last 4 games last year. It was not a fun schedule. It was not a fun year. So we're hopeful that we at least get a home game in January. And the question becomes,
and I've got the 49ers at, both of us have them at home. You've got against it. And it always is division opponents. Will be someone in the NFC West. I have them wrapping it up with the 49ers. You have them wrap it up with the Rams.
And the question becomes, are those teams going to be playing for anything? Not that it's going to make a difference in our minds on paper right now. Obviously, Matthew Stafford, Brock Purdy both have to stay healthy the whole year. But are those teams going to be playing for something? Will they be playing for the 1 seed? Will they be playing to up their wild card seating with the, you know, where are they going to be playing at in this week? And when you look at it from that perspective, Jess, this is a game that could determine a lot, right? You've got Carson Beck getting 9 games in. In your scenario, you look at it, you go, okay, I could see 2, maybe 3 wins. You know, again, 2-7, you're probably like, we got to go a different direction. 3-6, you're probably still got to go another direction. You know, if you beat the Jets, the Raiders, and the Giants, and they're all, you know, other division bottom feeders, that's not impressive. But like that last game, whether the team is playing for something or not will be irrelevant if it's a win. Because if you can say like, hey, we got our first division win in the last 2 years, doesn't matter if the opponent was benching guys or what, right? Like it's going to be important, especially for Mike LaFleur, especially for Carson Beck, especially for those young players. And that's where it's going to be interesting because we're not expecting the Cardinals to be playing for anything other than draft seeding. But if the Niners and the Rams are playing for something, wouldn't it also be cool if like the Niners needed to win that game in your scenario and you can go out and upset them and knock them out of the playoffs? Now it's not cool if you lose the first pick, right? And you know, you go from 2 wins to 3 wins on the season and now the Jets all of a sudden have the number 1 overall pick, right? But
and the Cardinals moved to number 4 and
right. And so
they end up where the college football season is, there's a 2 or a 3 quarterback tier to top the draft, and that would be the most Cardinals thing to do.
But it would, you know, if you're at, let's say in your scenario, 3 wins already, 4 wins already, a 5th win's not going to change. Like if you don't have a top 2 pick, you're going to have to move up this year to go get a guy. So, you know, unless other teams are better than expected, you know, 4 wins is not going to get you a 1st or 2nd overall pick. That'll get you around 5 to 7. You know, so beating the 49ers and knocking them out of the playoffs, that would be worth it to me. Because again, at some point you have to win games, right? Like you have to win games, but you especially have to win division games. And the Cardinals just haven't done that. And it doesn't matter who their coach has been since Bruce Arians.
Yeah. And with that, we will wrap up this edition of the Rise Up Series podcast, special of Cardinals Talk of the Web. The schedule comes out Thursday night, 5 p.m. Arizona time. I would imagine that we will probably record later that night and give our quick reactions and do our game-by-game predictions. And that'll wrap things up for that show and for this week. Until then, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.